Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and today I want to talk about my end game finished Huntress build. This is a raw damage build, and it just does so much damage, and it is incredibly tanky, almost unkillable, I would say. And let's just hop right into some gameplay here. So we're going to do the battlefield. This is X100, which has 420,000 more life. And these enemies pretty much just kind of evaporate as we run around here. And it is just absolutely just incredibly easy and powerful and fun build to play. And we've just done all of the content in the game. And I've even gone through and like min-maxed the gear a little bit here to make sure that we are going to be immune to like the scariest content. So for example here, what I mean by that is what I think is the scariest thing in the netherworld right now is this boss right here. Cinderolus, the Fireborn, and because of the cataclysms that are on this, it is pretty deadly. So all fire, lightning, blah 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 damage is all increased by 200%. So this fireball that's circling me right now does 500,000 damage. The fire waves when enemies die are going to do 57,000 damage. The floor is lava, does 63 damage per second, and the enemies who hit you do 35,000 fire damage and a chance to ignite. I don't really have a ton of health here, and so it's gonna be pretty crazy that I can just kind of walk right through this content and not really have to worry about it all that much, and it's just really stinking fun. This is typically the spot where I would go where people would come into Twitch chat and be like, oh, your character must be like invincible now. It's like, yeah, about that, and just watch me go die in like 3 seconds because this zone is just so damage dealing. And as you can see, we pretty much just face tank everything. So let's just hop right into the build and kind of talk about that. Now before we get started, I do want to say I don't really take any sort of sponsorship or something like that on like almost all of my videos. And so I've noticed that, you know, there's a lot of not subscribed watch time here versus subscribed. If you just want to hit that subscribe button, that does help out the channel the best. Don't feel like you really have to do anything else here. This just helps out a ton. Now, just hopping into the build here for the gear, pretty much what we are stacking everywhere is raw damage, more raw damage, armor, more armor, and it's just crazy how it works this way. If you just want to see over here on the side, we have 88% physical damage reduction, 66% elemental reduction, and 89% evasion. Now, what if I told you that I have 0 evasion and 0 armor on, or 0 elemental res on my gear? If you see here, this says gain from conversion, 55% from armor. That's coming from our stat here. This point right here gives us 55,000 elemental res. If I pick up any of the nodes, any of the things that have that, it goes down to 0, which is just absolutely crazy. And then from here, we're getting 132,000 evasion from our armor. And so this allows us just to dogpile one particular defensive stat, and it just turns into all the rest, which makes this character unfairly tanky. Now, as we're going to go through the gear here, you're going to see a lot of stuff where it's like raw damage on the base stats. This is nether gear. Nether gear can pretty much have stats grafted onto it from other pieces of gear that it normally might not be able to have. So I've grafted like % raw damage from rings onto like a lot of pieces of gear here. We have flat raw damage on a lot of places. And this is kind of like what you'll see. Now, there are some times where like I think this hat dropped with percentage roll damage, so we grafted on percentage armor instead. But that pretty much is it. Let's go through the legendaries though real quick. So the one thing I did graft on here in terms of a legendary is the Midos Collector's Bracers. This gives us gold is fine, but this also increases the radius at which we pick up basically everything in the game besides items. And this is like a huge quality of life here. Highly recommend getting this on your gloves. I don't really think that there are very good gloves for this particular build. And so splashing for this is pretty nice. This does eat up one of your grafts for another piece of gear, which kind of sucks, but you know, it is what it is. For the bottom part down here, we're pretty much always going to be looking for Astorius Affinity on everything. This gives us a multiplier for our weapon. And then we're getting Void Arrow Mastery And then any of the stats we're going to be putting points into. So like toughness is pretty good. We're also going to be doing savagery. We're going to be putting some points into fury and bravery. So pretty much any of those stats would be fine as long as you're like not getting too much, I guess. For our bracers, we're picking up the Wrath of Geralzor. Gives us percentage raw damage. We're our raw damage build. I haven't shown this off yet, but right now our raw damage is 702,000 to 1,666,857 raw damage. So just a lot of raw damage, basically raw damage everywhere. Now it's important to note that on bracers, you do want to pick up Mana Leech. Pretty stinking mandatory. Very, very good here. And you'll notice that on a lot of the epic stats here, we're looking for fork, raw damage, projectile speed, or rebound chance. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And the other thing that we're going to be picking up here is going to be fire and shadow res. Those are pretty much the only epic stats you're going to see. And movement speed, I guess. Now for the shoulders here, we're doing the pads of the Drunken Master. These are a little bit misunderstood. It gives us 5 additional projectiles, and additional projectiles are now cast around you. So if we cast our arrow shot here, our primary skill, you can kind of see that they shoot out in a radius around us. But if we are doing void arrow, it instead goes and fires like, in a straight line. And so we we don't need to worry about that. The pads of the Drunken Master seemingly don't really work on Void Arrow, which is just, I guess a nice thing to have. We do have some damage to elites on here as well. That's a kind of a nice stat to pick up. This one, I really kind of wish that I had gotten armor percentage as well. Armor is just really insane to stack up. Now for the hat, we're doing the Awoken Hat. We talked about this a whole bunch. What this does is it resets the cooldown of our support skill whenever we go into Tormented or Delighted, which kind of makes our rotation being, we go and shoot twice, and then we can go and Smoke Cloud, and it will reset the cooldown of our smoke screen. And so we can just kind of do this all day, and it's just pretty nice. And the smoke screen has a bunch of benefits, which we'll talk about soon here. Next up is the Amulet of Impartiality. Now this one is kind of cool because this changes how we're going to do our Ancestral Tree. I'll talk about that at the end of the gear section here, but just note that this turns elemental boost into raw boost and vice versa. Next up here, we have the Bright Steel Warden. This gives us a tremendous amount of armor. Very important to pick this up. You can see 22, 21. If I take it off, we go down to 139. That's pretty big drop there, especially because that is turning into our elemental resist and our evasion as well. Next up, we have the Engil's Hollow. This is not necessarily mandatory. This is just kind of something I wanted to have. If you wanted to replace this with something else, you certainly could. But what this does, it makes it so that when smoke screen is active, when we pop out of it, enemies are going to be silenced. It only works on some enemies, and they're going to be blinded, which makes them less likely to hit you. That's not really mandatory in any way, shape, or form. You could potentially go and put like some Magic Vine kind of stuff on here instead, or any other thing that you would want. For our belt is one of the big damage mitigators of the build, the Ares Unbreakable Barrier. What this does is it makes it so that if you would get hit for more than 30% of your health and shield, you instead get hit for 30% of your health or shield instead. This mechanic was so strong in Diablo 3, this allowed people just basically face tank the universe, and we're kind of doing the similar thing here. So like we can get hit by really big hits and it just doesn't matter all that much, especially because we have like almost 90% evasion. Getting hit like 4 times in a row for, a huge amount of our health is very unlikely. So we're very, very tanky. We can almost not die thanks to this combination alone. Next up, we have the Nether Ancestral Champions Present. This is going to increase the rank of every gift, which we'll talk about here shortly. Gifts are something we take a lot of. We have the Defender's Twin Bands. This increases the defense stat of both your rings. This is not as important as you may think. If there's something else that you want to put here instead, this is another spot you could put. And then last, and certainly not least, is the Sandals of Speed. This gives us a huge movement speed multiplier. Right now I'm chilling at about 7.3, and without this boot we would drop down to 4.6. Now I do want to note that going and getting like anything above a 7 starts to get like a little bit wonky, because your like interact radius with portals and things is pretty small, and if you're going too fast you'll just like shoot right past it, so it's pretty annoying to do. For our bow, we're using the Big Fury Primordial Bow. Gives us a ton of raw damage. We'll talk more about this later. And then for our runes, we're doing kill enemies to give you a big shield. And then when that shield procs, there's a chance to proc a whole bunch more. Now, this part here is what really makes us kind of super duper man. And Thorn Bite protection gives you a shield that's based on the sum of your armor, elemental res, and evasion. Well, as you remember, we're stacking these up pretty high and they're cascading down to one another. And so we just get a huge shield up to 410,000. And since we barely get hit because we're evading all the time, we are very, very tanky. And it's very hard for enemies to even hit us hard enough to activate the Are's Unbreakable Barrier. And when they do, well, probably gonna hit us a lot harder than that. So yeah, this is just a very nice thing to have. Now, the one thing I did talk about with the epic stats is the fire and shadow resist. I chose to focus on these because I find these effects to be really annoying. Fire res, I'm up to 89.8%. Having a burn on you can just kind of like chip away at your health very, very quickly, it seems. And so I just go and I get the fire res. It seems to help out a lot. And then shadow resistance is important because this reduces the chance that shadow confusion is going to hit you, which kind of like messes with your mana regeneration. And basically screws with your mana gain, so you potentially be in a situation where you're out of mana if you're shadow confused. And so this both lowers the chance and I believe also lowers the amount of time that you'll be shadow confused. Lastly, for Ultimatum here, I'm using the area damage reduction. If you want to instead do more damage, you could probably go and do critical strike damage. That would be pretty okay as well. Now, we already talked a little bit about the attributes here. We're going to go attributes and then we'll talk about the Ancestral Tree. But we're picking up toughness here. This node here is mandatory for the build. It's giving us 55,000 out of 55,000 elemental res. Without this node, we have no elemental res, which is very bad. Going in here into the savagery branch gives us a lot of raw damage multiplier. It gives us critical strike damage, gives us armor pen, all really good stuff. We also have basically, if you look down like almost to the bottom, it says we have plus 70,000 Reaper damage. This is equal to 10% of the difference between our min raw damage and our min elemental damage. So 10% of that is 70,000 because it's just such a gap right now, which is pretty cool. We're going to take these 10 points here for critical strike chance, and then I just kind of throw all the rest of the points into bravery. You could go and you could put more points in the bravery, like take points out of fury if you want to do more magic finding. Realistically, like you could, even throw points out of savagery and into bravery. The only points I wouldn't recommend moving are the toughness points because that elemental res is very darn impactful. Now, I've talked about doing this, the Ancestral Legacy, and these are basically the points we're going to take. The lone point that's down here, you do get this stone from beating the second step of the Adam Noster's Trials, gives us more projectiles, so additional projectiles and then multiplicative additional projectiles. Works really well with our shoulders that are giving us more proj, and just like we have a lot of proj all over the place, and so this allows us to basically like flood the air and flood the room with tons of projectiles bouncing around all over the place, which is just really nice. I do want to point out that this is an ancestral gift. We talked about this here, but with the the ancestral champions present, anything that is a gift is going to get one more rank to it. So we can count up all the gifts that we get. We're going to go over here. We're going to get this Seasoned Hunter, also a gift, attack speed, armor pen. We go over here, Pain Weaver, also a gift, raw damage to elites, life regen. Another gift over here of the elemental boost. Now, elemental boost here is giving us raw damage because we're using Amulet of Impartiality. This is making our elemental boosts into raw boosts basically, and vice versa. And so if we go and we search here, Normally, roll kind of gets screwed over because there's only 2 roll gifts here, and they're kind of far away. This one's like very much down here, whereas elemental has 3 that are very close. And so this makes it so that the raw damage is actually really stinking close to the start here for us. So picking out raw damage, damage to elites, raw damage, raw damage, raw damage, raw damage, picking up a skill that gives us, you guessed it, raw damage. How many times can I say raw damage in one video? More raw damage, more armor pen, more armor. Like, just kind of brain dead to take this. Raw damage, and then lastly, attack speed, armor penetration. The only really thing that I think that you could probably change about this is if you don't like pressing buttons at all and you don't want to have an active skill at all, you could go and get this gift here for more magic find, or you can go here and get more armor. Either one of these would be fine and still allow you to path out this way. Really, I just like pressing buttons occasionally, and it's just nice to have. And that's pretty much it for the Ancestral Tree. Next up, let's talk about these skills here. So we're doing the Mistwalker for a couple of different reasons. You could really do the Sharpshooter of the Wilds if you really wanted to. I think that this is fine as well. It does give you quite a bit of speed. It kind of does get you up to that too fast breakpoint for me. Like 10, I kind of feel like it's very hard to like go through portals and stuff, but also the Mistwalker just gives us so much defenses. So first off, what Mistwalker's skill is: cast a smoke screen, become invisible, and mist can't target you. Normally lasts for 3 seconds, but we extend it to 8. This also gives us critical strike chance when we're coming out of it. And then this here makes it so that we ignore incoming attacks while we're in the smoke screen, which means you are invincible. You cannot take any damage at all while you're in the smoke screen, with the exception of damage over time that's already on you. And so that's pretty much just fire damage, but we're picking up fire resist, so we're pretty good to go there as well. Next up, we pick up critical strike damage. If you want more gold, you can go and pick up that instead. This point doesn't really matter all that much. Same with our final point. And then we're also going to go and stun enemies whenever we activate smoke screen. And we can activate smoke screen like spamming like every 2 seconds. So you can just like lock down bosses this way. And then the Armor of Illusion here is the way that we're getting all of our evasion. Armor of Illusion basically takes 60% of our armor, turns it into evasion. So that's 133,000. Just, you know, the more you stack up armor, the more resist you get, the more evasion you get. It's wild. Our like left click skill here is arrow shot. We have it set up here for fork chance. And in our particular, you know, stats here for projectiles, we currently have 80% fork chance. We have 107% rebound chance. This is important to get that. And then we have 102% projectile speed and 0 pierce chance. And as you can see, we have 8.6 additional projectiles as well. And so with this pretty much makes it so that arrow shot will always fork because there's over 100% fork chance. And when arrow shot forks, it forks into 5 arrows instead. So when you shoot out arrow shot in a huge radius around you, it's going to bounce against the walls. It's going to hit tons of enemies. Any enemy it hits from, it's going to fork out into 5 more arrows. It's just going everywhere. Now, if it does hit a wall, it increases its damage. That's just pretty nice. And then we're shooting even more arrows with it. So we're just shooting out tons of arrows with this. And what this does is whenever we hit an enemy that wasn't affected by poison, they're now going to get poison. And poison does damage over time, which means it just rips through shields. So if an enemy's like doesn't take any damage until it takes 7 hits first, well, the poison is just going to tear through that really fast. Also, having like tons of projectiles in the air pretty much means that those shields are going to evaporate anyways. Our main big boy damage skill here is Void Arrow. Now, since we have 100% rebound from gear, we don't have to take this node, and instead we're going to take Concentration of the Void. That's going to make it so that our fork damage actually increases or fork chance increases the damage of Void Arrow. Void Arrow itself pretty much will always pierce as long as you fully charge it up. It will shoot out 5 arrows. This goes up with your projectiles. That's 100% pierce chance. Note that when you're fully charged up, you're also doing 300% more damage with the skill. And so this fork chance just gives us even more damage. It's pretty nice. We shoot out more arrows with this. This makes it so that when we hit enemies with the void arrow, it applies wormhole to them. And then this one makes it so that whenever an enemy is killed that has wormhole on it, so any enemy that has been hit, it will kill another nearby non-boss enemy. You'll still get the XP and loot. And this can kill like even invincible invincible elites, not bosses. So if you're in the forge and you get the like, there will be an elite that is invincible until the wave is cleared, you can kill that guy. Lastly, the Torment of the Void here pretty much allows you to charge up the void arrow instantaneously while you're tormented. This is why we're always like in the sad mode as possible, because otherwise it can take quite a long time to charge it up, which is not really desirable. If you're trying to switch into this build, I'd highly recommend that you either level the skill up high enough so you can get this particular node, or you go and get skill mastery on your gear so you can just skip ahead. Really, really easy to do, and you'll be able to use this particular point here. Now, let's talk Reapers real quick. So one of the things that's really great about this build is that you can use any Reaper you want at all. The Big Fury Primordial Bow is hands down the best, gives us the biggest damage here. But really, one of the great things I love about it is I can just go and level up whatever weapons I want. I can go and get everything to Primordial doing this build, and just absolutely still just laying down the law, pretty much killing everything. Only maybe the most tanky of enemies will still like survive. Just gonna tear through everything. Now, the bow that's probably the ultimate endgame bow is the Almagod's Vengeance Bow. This is the bow that you earn for killing Almagod once you complete the Nether Realm. And the reason why this bow is the best is because it has huge roll damage multiplier potential. The Big Fury bow has 84.75 at my current level roll damage multiplier, and up to 500% max roll damage percentage, which is just pretty big. However, Vengeance is uncapped. It is based on how many enemies you've killed. And so for every 0, it has 1% roll for like basically every 1,000 enemies you've killed. And so this has 59,000 victims, and this has 13,000. It's running around like 73k or something like that. And so that's why we have 73% roll damage multiplier. Get this up to like 1 million, 2 billion, 10 trillion enemies killed, and your damage is just going to be, through the moon, which is absolutely nuts. And really the cool thing too is that with this particular setup, it not just works with any bow, but it'll also work with other heroes as well. So to kind of show you guys a little bit of footage here, I was playing the mage and hit level 100, and somebody in chat said like, hey, you can just slap your archer gear onto this character and play magic missiles. And we just like went from leveling up to just going into like tier 10 battlefields just right off the bat. And yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. We're just absolutely clearing through everything really easily. And so this gear is pretty universal and pretty nice to use. As part of why I just like the whole build and the setup is that it doesn't really require like a PhD, and it also will just work for a lot of different things. And that's pretty much it for the build. One last thing that I do want to talk about though is I did learn a trick. Maybe we'll make this a separate video as well. I did learn something that I wasn't doing correctly with the Slormatologist, even with the video we did. And so there's two little tricks that I want to teach you as a bonus here for staying to the end of the video. Comment down below that you're thankful for that tip that you learned at the end of the video. But one of the annoying things here about leveling this stuff up here is that if you like want to go and set this up to get the double reinforcement, well, now you got to right click the harmonies a whole bunch. It was a neat trick to get around that. I'm going to control right click the harmonies. They're going to disappear from my inventory. But if I close my inventory, they actually hit the ground, and now they're in my main stash. Now, instead of clicking the transfer crafting materials, what I'm going to do is going to press Alt, right click, and this is going to pull out 100 stacks instead, like so. It's going to make your life a lot easier while you're trying to use the Slormancer here. So we can put this back in, and we can go and just drag the 100 stacks over. If you right click these, it'll just put one in at a time. And so we can do it like that. Now, one thing that I've kind of noticed here is that it is like very difficult to build up potential in an item at higher levels. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put in 29 of these aptitudes. And what this does is it puts us way over the critical reinforcement chance, but also each aptitude increases the amount of potential you gain from a critical reinforcement. So if I don't have any, it's just going to be at 15%. But if I have 29 in, we go above 100%, which means we keep the full potential the whole time. And so as we go here, we can just go click a few more harmonies in. We're going to guarantee to go up 2 levels and keep our potential, which is just really stinking nice. Especially because in endgame, I think I've had like this amulet leveling up for like over a day. Like it's really difficult to build up potential, and you know, you have probably an absolute ton of aptitudes, you know, just sitting around. Just slap 29 of them in the gear. Hopefully this video helped you out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Pretty much kind of wrapping up with Slormancer here a little bit. Maybe we'll do like a couple more videos. If there's anything in particular that you want to see, let me know. There's a whole bunch of different games on the horizon here. I'll probably be covering Hero Siege. It's my very first season. I don't really know much about it. I haven't really found like really great resources for it just yet. So we have that. We have PoE 1 supposedly has a season coming up soon. We've got, you know, Torchlight Infinite's probably gonna have a season about like over a month from this point. There's this new fishing game from the Viva La Dirt League guys, the Nice Day for Fishing, they're probably gonna check out as well. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of good stuff coming soon. Hopefully you can come check us out with us at the stream, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you for hanging out. Appreciate you. Later.